Afternoon, bro.
Damn. It took you 3 rings.
Was that 3? It was only 2 on my end, but whatever.
I'm just joking. Damn. Really weird scenario. Really weird question right now, but how you doing?
I think I'm a little overly caffeinated, but for the most part, I'm okay.
What's overly caffeinated to you?
Well, 2 cups of coffee and 1 cup of tea.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so
In the span of 2 hours.
okay. Can
I think that's pretty intense for me.
I feel like I'm gonna say something right now, and I'm gonna scare a lot of people.
Oh.
But last year, because we can say that now, last year, there was moments and days that I would drink up to 8 cups of coffee.
Okay.
Now, mind you, I don't think that's a healthy level of caffeine by any means, and I do not recommend anyone to do that. I'm actually really amazed that I was able to handle that amount of caffeine. If you know what I mean.
Who's supposed to be feeling scared? Like you said, it was gonna scare people. Who's that supposed to be scaring?
Anyone? Like, dude, 8 cups of coffee. I'm talking about like not just one day. I'm talking about weeks of 8 cups of coffee. Like, How to Give Yourself a Heart Attack by Vince Blaze. It's my new book that I'm coming out with.
I mean, okay, to be fair, on most work days, I would usually have easily 5 to 6 helpings of coffee at the work coffee machine. But the thing is, I don't know, maybe work caffeine is just different from home caffeine, because I just feel like whatever I had at home is making me like I can feel the blood flow accelerating here and the heart pumping a little faster than it usually should be. So
Aww.
No, I'm just really excited to talk on this podcast. That's all.
Yeah, that's how I see it.
This is my caffeine. This is it.
That's how I see it, bro. Like, oh my god, I didn't know. Like, wow, so blessed that you're so. I'm being an asshole. I'm being a total douchebag right now. But yeah. Well, I mean, we could talk about coffee all day, and this is a Coffee Chats episode. So shout out to everyone who's listened to all 3 episodes so far, because this is episode number 3, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Number 3. Holy crap! Number 3 already.
Number 3.
Jeez.
Which is insane, but to think that like we're still in January recording this, and like my goal, like my minimum threshold was to be able to record 12 episodes during the year. So we're literally done a quarter, and we're not even a week into the January. So let's go.
Holy jeez. Yeah. Oh wow, that's crazy.
Talk about hit the ground running.
Yeah, like literally.
Yeah, and I mean, we did technically start recording this podcast, and it obviously came into fruition prior to 2021. But yeah, I think that, we did a good episode chatting about, New Year's resolution, because that's a good thing to, bring into the New Year's. We talked about resetting, and these are kind of common themes, but I think that one thing that we're kind of not addressing is there's obviously a lot of positive things that came out of 2020, even though that's a very bold statement to say, because you and I think we're both in very blessed situations. We mentioned it before, we both had a job through this, we were both healthy, and we both managed to still stay busy and be productive throughout this pandemic. So I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on like positive things that came out of 2020.
Positive things that came out of 2020. I would say, I guess the positive thing, like the biggest thing that I remember that I felt the most positive about was recently, I think, Christmas. Christmas was a kind of like doing Christmas during the lockdown, and for anybody that's not from Canada or Manitoba, we are currently in code red, which means that we are not allowed to have gatherings of more than 5 people outdoors, and indoors we are only limited to the people that we live with, essentially. So literally, you can't have anybody over, right? So what that meant for us, and what that meant for a lot of people, was people had to rethink the way they were going to spend Christmas if they couldn't spend it with their families and their loved ones, right? And I remember my own dad making this actual comment about Christmas in lockdown, because you had to go really out of your way to make sure people got gifts. You know, if your prerogative was gift giving still this Christmas, and then you had to go, you know, the hoops you had to jump through to make sure somebody got something. You know, it's just not, it almost feels like every gift meant just a little bit more, knowing that you had to go through this and that. Like, for example, like, you want to get something specifically from Pole Park or from Best Buy, even things we would normally just like not even think twice about walking in. Now you have to place your order online, go to wherever it is that you purchase this from, wait at curbside pickup, literally drive your butt over to whoever needs to deliver it to. You know, I guess it's become sort of commonplace nowadays for, like, you know, those sorts of things. But, you know, just the fact that, like, you are now picking and choosing and going out of your way to make that effort to make sure somebody gets something for Christmas, I thought was kind of special. And probably the most thing in recent memory that was a big positive out of 2020. Yeah, first thing I could think of off the top of my head.
No, and I think to kind of sum that up, I think it's becoming more appreciative, you know, of things that we
Yeah.
don't necessarily have on a regular basis, or things that we take for granted, you know. I think that that's definitely that's how I would summarize it without taking away all the details that you brought up. I think are super crucial, but being more appreciative of what we have and what we're receiving from other people, because yeah, we can't take it for granted. You know, we might not have it. We lost our freedom this last year, so.
What about you, man? What was positive that came from 2020 for you?
I mean, I'm sure like there's a lot of positives. I'm trying to think of like the one thing that really stood out to me. I think I would say, there we go, boys. So for those who are listening to the podcast right now, I tried to cover up the flare on YouTube because we had like a massive flare coming through the camera, and I put like my light diffuser bag on top of it, and it just fell on my window. But anyways, that was hilarious. Yeah, one of the positive things, well, for me, 2020 was obviously like the thing I'm most grateful for is being able to move into this condo. Speaking of which, thanks to the reminder, that's like, hey, Jesus, take the wheel. Okay. Yeah, being able to be in this condo, we got possession. Excuse me, we got possession late, like December like 23rd or something last year. So I didn't spend much time, and I would say that 2020 was like the year that I spent the most time here. It was unfortunate, like I wanted to be able to bring more people over here. Like that was one of the big things for me, to be able to finally live into the city, because for everyone who doesn't know, I used to live 45 minutes outside the city prior to 2020. So that meant that like if I went to a party, I either couldn't drink or I'd be drinking and driving, you know? So I usually wouldn't end up in those situations. I wouldn't be able to go out to parties. I wouldn't be able to stay out late. Yeah, so I was very thankful to finally be in the city. And to have a place to my own, I'm extremely blessed. And I've like spent a lot of time alone. Like when I said I wanted a place of my own to be alone, I did not intend 2020 to happen. I did not intend to spend this much time alone. But that being said, I think that's the number one thing that I'm thankful for. And I would say for me personally, the best thing that happened in my 2020 was being able to move into this condo and to have a lot of space and time to myself.
My question is, okay, so if this is the best thing that happened to you in 2020, getting a place of your own despite all the restrictions and lockdown, what did it mean for you to get your own place and be alone? What does it mean for you to be alone? Why is that so important? Why does that have so much value and weight that you would call this the best thing that happened to you in 2020?
Good question. That's a good question. Um, so relating back to our previous podcast, if I may, I think that, you know, having, so we kind of discussed in our last one, resetting, and how reflection and stillness are some of the best ways to really reset your mind in terms of some going over some of the negative things that happens, positive things, and really being intentional in the direction you want to go. Now, we also mentioned something that's a very important point: distractions. Now, in my opinion, being alone, and again, we mentioned that quote last time, like that quote where they said, like, well, you have all this time now, don't ever use that excuse that you don't have an excuse to say that you didn't do anything anymore, right? Or you don't have the time to do it, right? Now, I was completely alone and I had my own schedule. So that meant that I really had to, one, learn to be okay with my time alone, but also, I didn't have distractions. I didn't have a lot of obstacles anymore because I didn't have like the distance or whatever. And so I had also stillness to think. And so everything that was in front of me that was that I was placing in my head that was not allowing me to do work was an excuse, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Now, is it possible to come to that conclusion with having like a busy household, a bunch of difficulties and stillness, no stillness, sorry, like a bunch of distractions? Yes, it is. But in my opinion, it was easy for me to just, not easy, but it was a lot more in my face to have to face it, to be like, you know what, Vince, you are overthinking everything that you're doing right now. All these excuses that you're saying, that you don't have the time, that you don't have the right gear, that you don't have a place of your own, that, your parents take all your energy, you have to drive 45 minutes into the city and blah, 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 and you can't make connections. All these things were now in the excuse pile. And I'm not saying that, like, again, you can't come to that conclusion alone, but having the place of my own, I could tell that these were now excuses. I had that stillness, that reflection, that platform, if I can even put it that way, to just be like, okay, you know what, Vince, like, you need to get your stuff together, and everything that you're not doing right now is because it's an excuse and you're not willing to admit it. So I think that's why it was important to me, is because it led me to be able to have that stillness and that space, and to really have to fight my own demons inside. So besides just the excuses, like, have to face, all the other things that are going in my head alone. So
Right. Okay. Well, I'm glad you were able to secure that for yourself. Actually, I mean, moving out for the first time is a huge thing to take on, right? And an even bigger thing, granted that we have to do it in this time, like with the lockdown and with COVID happening, and with the social distancing and all that stuff. It's certainly out of all the times you could have done it, you probably picked you probably entered it with the highest handicap, I think.
Well, mind
one
you,
of the highest handicaps in existence.
Right. Well, I mean, like, we moved before COVID was a thing, so
no, for sure.
But yeah, it was during winter, and like there's not a lot of stuff that was happening at that time anyways. But yeah, no, I see what you mean. Yeah, it's definitely it's a weird time to be moving around during COVID. Like, I think that a lot of people actually did purchase, I think, houses and stuff like that, because we saw so much more value in where we live. Because if this is going to be where I'm going to be for the next, 24 months, that I better be hella comfortable, if you know what I mean. So
yeah, for sure.
I think that, that created a lot more, made it more valuable, like, to people, a good space. So I think that's why, like, IKEA blew up, like everything blew up, home furniture, plants, people were going crazy for all that stuff, because becoming comfortable was now the next excuse, like, oh, I'm not comfortable at home, so I can't be productive, you know. But also it also showed its importance in terms of like, okay, well, I don't have a good chair, I don't have a good couch, I don't have, good lighting, and I do think that if I'm going to spend a lot of time here, then might as well invest in it, right?
I still can't get over how big owning plants was this summer. Like it seemed like everybody was out getting plants to the point where like it was just people were starting group chats, Kijijis, and all that stuff. Just I'm like, oh, I got this plant, this plant, that plant, and I'm just like, dang, like people really out here just like securing plants left and right. You know what I mean?
Man, I think I'm going to go a little bit on a tangent on this, and I'm going to try to tiptoe through this because a little bit of a sensitive topic, and I don't want to name out names, but I was, man, I'm like regretting this right away. But okay, so just keeping it 100% here. I was grabbing a plant for someone else, okay? A very rare plant, okay? Because like Vancouver, you can get that stuff like real easy, but here we get like limited supplies, and if we do get supplies, Verde gets it and it's like marked up like $30 more. So if you want to get like a decent price of a plant for a rare plant, you kind of have to really like be on the ball of checking the stores all the time, checking that, they're in stock, etc. You have to really, really follow it, like you said, like making group chats and whatever, and you have to know the exact names, etc., etc. You have to really invest time into it. So this person was like, well, they have this plant at this store, and I live near Rona, so the person asked me like, can you go pick this up? Okay, I kid you not, this is how wild it was. There was 3 other people at the store at the time. Mind you, it was 7 a.m. 7 a.m. There's 3 other people. I think that's when the store opens. 7 a.m. We're there. There's 3 other people at the store. They are all waiting for the same plant. And this lady at the store, okay, and this is, I'm literally like throwing Rona under the bus, but this lady literally lied to us and told us that they didn't have this plant because what was happening was that people were coming in and buying 6 of them, all 6 of the plants, and they would resell it for $20 more.
Wow.
Right? So we're all there waiting for this plant that is said to be in stock. And she's like, yeah, it's still in the boxes. Like, we haven't opened it yet. And I'm like, okay, when are you guys going to open it? And she's like, well, we don't know. We can't tell you that. Mind you, I found out later from that same lady, because I went back that day. I found out that she had the boxes open and they were just in the back, and she let me come pick one out. She was like, we want you to just come choose one because it's not fair for the others. And I was just like that's how intense it was to like have to get a plant, and being in that scenario of being like I need a plant. And mind you, like, I appreciate that I got a couple of those plants too, but it's not a scenario place that I want to be in. That's so much stress, man. But that was a rough experience. Sorry.
Why? I mean, okay, I mean, if you're gonna start a hobby and plant keeping is the hobby that you want to go into, cool. But why the, chaos for it? I wonder. So, is it just because it's the cool thing to do, or?
Well, I mean, again, this is very touchy subject, but like, do you want to be the first one to have gone to that bubble tea place? We talked about it in our first episode.
Oh gosh, yeah, I guess so.
You want to be the one with that new Gucci bag,
right?
You want to be the one with the new camera. That's something I can relate to.
Yeah, okay.
The new plugin,
right.
You want to be the one that has it all. Pokemon Go, you mess with that. I know you
yeah,
funks with that too.
I do.
So you want that rare Pokemon, right?
Yeah, this is true.
I think that like collecting it in a natural way is nice, but when you see everyone else on social media who has it, you want to be the one to have it. You want to flex that plant too. Unhealthy. I'm telling you. But society does that too. Pressure.
No, you know what? Even myself, like I wanted to I was enticed to get a plant because everybody else was out there getting plants. And because I had also heard of like, the benefits of keeping plants. Like, I was just like, this actually sounds like something I could actually do. This sounds a lot easier than like, keeping a pet or like, that sort of thing. Well, in some cases it's harder than keeping a pet depending on how fragile or how demanding of a plant that you buy. But I was kind of very close to getting. I was kind of close to getting one, but I didn't because I was just like, you know what? I'm not even sure if I really want one. It's just I see everybody else doing it. You know,
And that right there, it's like FOMO.
FOMO. Yeah. Oh, yeah. FOMO.
Big topic, but like that's literally why that craze happened, is because like everyone was like, "Oh, this girl getting a plant, I'm gonna get a plant too." And all of a sudden, like everyone's putting plant lady on their Instagram profile. I'm like, bruh, like
You
seriously?
know, it's very interesting though because like I was hesitant to get a plant the whole time until my friends started literally being like, "You should get a plant," and I'm like, "Well, why should I get a plant?" Like, I'm mostly at home like making music or I'm biking most of the summer. Like, why do I need a plant? Can you
Conspiracy
tell me? Sorry, what?
conspiracy theory. So
Okay.
if you don't mess with plants and you know nothing about them, they can't flex their plants on you. But if you have a plant, they can flex their plants on you. You know how I feel?
Okay, I see, I see. Just like you're trying to get, you're becoming ingrained into their, into that particular society, so that you can be shown how inferior you are to their knowledge.
Hey, all I'm saying is like that's a valid point, May. I'm not saying that people are doing that on purpose. I'm just saying that, that's a possibility. And sometimes that could be the case. But sometimes, sometimes, like obviously most of the time, I would say people are actually recommending a plant because, excuse me, they do see the benefits of it. So I'm just saying, possibility of that happening.
Okay, okay. Well, you know what? If it's 20, if you come to the end of 2020 and the best thing that happened to you was you went and became a plant keeper, then kudos to you because I'm sure there are a lot of great things about keeping plants and aesthetically they look amazing.
You're being so
But
negative. I'm sorry. That was all me.
no, that's okay. I mean, like it's just really interesting to see how one of those things changed the landscape of how like just the way trends like how like even just in our little city, just how trends work and how quickly they can spread. And you know, it makes me wonder if like if COVID wasn't a thing, like would plant keeping be as big? I mean, arguably it could be because I think there are people who keep plants anyway all the time. I just
Mhm.
felt like I just felt like there was a huge insurgence of people buying plants now, and I'm just like seeing people on Instagram that I don't know. I can't really look at somebody's Instagram and be like, oh, well, that person looks like there's somebody that could keep a plant or would be keeping plants. But now everybody's just the fact that everybody was sharing each other's stories all of a sudden. I'm just like, what the heck's going on? Do I need a plant? Like, I don't know.
No, and I think that's a
It,
valid point. Yeah.
I just think, and interestingly, I almost got to the point where I saw a lot of producers introducing plants into their studio, and I'm just like, do I need these?
Well, I
Will I
mean,
produce? Will I produce better with them? Like,
they,
yeah. Anyway, yeah.
they are homebodies, so like I mean, I could see the benefits of having a plant.
Bro, we were all homebodies this year. What do you? Well, I
Fact,
hope you were.
fact.
I hope most of you guys were homebodies.
True, true. Yeah. Anyways, enough of a tangent. Sorry, that was
Yeah,
like
that was a weird.
we went from
Tangent.
negativity. Let's go back to like the positive things, so the best things that happened during
Mm.
2020. Yeah. Give me another one.
I really liked seeing people make let's see, like basically a lot of people started side hustles uh on like either they found their niche in some sort of in cooking some sort of dish, offered some sort of service, some sort of craft, but it really became very evident that having that like the lockdown was making the viability of having your own little side business very very much a thing, making
Attractive.
it yeah, attractive even, yeah. And I mean, like I only purchased from a handful of people who were selling things on the side, but I was very happy with everything that I bought every single time. It was mostly food, by the way. But yeah, no, it was really interesting to see how people were monetizing on some of these things. Like I'm just like, these are ideas I probably never would have had or never would have even thought to try to attempt, or that I would think anybody would try to attempt. But I think really the lockdown brought the creativity out of some of us, and some people are still going forward with like some of their side hustles right now. Like especially the people who are doing the food, man. Like God bless you guys,
Mm,
because I mean, like I miss the restaurants, but just seeing people come up with some of the stuff that they have. Um, like personal favorites, like I'm not sure I'm saying this right. The Machui guys,
okay.
um, and what was it too? The rice triangles, like two of my favorites personally.
The rice triangles you're talking about. Man, I'm half Japanese. How am I blanking on
Onigiri, I think you're thinking
onigiri?
about one.
Onigiri. Onigiri.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they called it the rice triangle, but like I sampled a couple of them, and I was just like, man, like
Hmm.
they were really good. But yeah, no, just watching everybody form their respective side hustles and I assume thrive, because like there are a lot of people who, for example, who were especially making food that were posting that they were selling out so quickly that they couldn't keep up with demand. A lot of people, or at least from what I've seen, which is great. Like
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And yeah, personally, I supported a few restaurants here in Winnipeg. I did some free work for them to make some promotional work because I just thought that it was, obviously
right,
restaurants I think were doing decently well, but they have a high um, overhead cost. They have staff, they've got a lot of people are involved. And during March and stuff, they were obviously shut down for the most part, and a lot of them went out of business. Like I think my friend Pete, who's from, I'm gonna mess this up. He's from Kentucky,
okay,
and he told me that like in that state, 500 restaurants went out of business during COVID,
oh my goodness,
which is insane. So yeah, I think that I wanted to do my parts to be able to do that and to be able to connect with more people. But it was nice to see that grow and to be part of supporting the community. I think that was one of the blessings and one of the good things of this year was to be able to support others as well, not just strive for my own goals.
true, true for sure.
So speaking about supporting, I think that especially towards the end we were able to support each other, and that is one thing I would say in terms of like relationships. That's probably one of the things I'm most thankful for.
Right.
Because during 2020, I lost one of my best friends. It was someone that I was very close to, and there was just an incident that happened with one of my relationships, and I lost that person as well. Well, let's put it that way.
Mm.
And like a week later, I had to cut my best friend out of my life. And without going into too many details, I just thought that unfortunately this person didn't share the similar values that I wanted to be associated with. And they weren't bringing a lot of positivity in my life. And they weren't being very respectful to me. And so I had to cut this person out, and it hurt. I stood my ground though, so I'm proud of it, because there's only a certain amount of disrespect that I will tolerate. And I'm proud of myself for that. But yeah, it definitely hurt to have to cut that and lose people like that, especially in such a difficult time. And like this is someone that I would have taken a bullet for. It's someone that like meant the world to me, and someone that I had shared so many memories with. And yeah, it's someone that was like part of my life, like part of my history, and will always be. So I'm still thankful for that person and what they offered me, and I wish them the best. But yeah, I did have to lose some people. But that being said, positivity out of that is when you get rid of negativity, it opens the door for positivity. And I don't know that we would have connected as well as we did had it not been for that. And so for that, I'm thankful.
No, for sure. And you know what? Interestingly, I feel like we were somewhat in very similar circumstances when you and I are reconnected as friends after spending many years being acquaintances, I'd say. I was probably in the same boat, where I felt like there were people that I thought would be around long term that just decided to not be around long term anymore. And I was just like, well, what the heck's going on? Like, I feel like this would be the best time to stick around for each other, and that just wasn't happening. And I mean, I'm not going to go and complain and be a sob story here because, their prerogative is their prerogative. But of course, for me, I just had to just kind of accept the fact that, like, okay, this person, that person doesn't want to be in my life anymore and just move on. But at the same time, like you said, freeing up that space allows for something else to fill the void, right? Um, and I for sure think that the void has been filled. I can appreciate the times that I had with the people that aren't around anymore. And that's exactly how you have to kind of carry yourself forward through it, like appreciate what you had and trudge on through because, I mean, I still feel like this is a time where we need each other. Like we need to be able to lean on each other for support. Just so you can prop yourself back up again and still trudge on through.
I'm going to argue that if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
So obviously debatable, but one thing I told you was like having this place was one of the greatest blessing because it allowed me the platform to be alone. Now
Right.
I lost an ex-girlfriend and I lost a friend. I was truly alone in COVID-19 when you think about it.
Mm.
But if you don't face that, if you're filled with distractions, other people that can just come and help you cope with it, how do you ever learn to deal with it on your own? What if you were alone? What if you were like, is the only solution to that is, I don't want to say it, but like, harming yourself,
Mm.
No, that's not. It's about building the strength. Now, I'm not saying that other people can be there. It's not a good thing to have people there to help you, remind you of certain things. And I think that we've definitely illustrated that very well. But again, you're not going to fight someone else's battles for them. No one's going to fight yours for you. And so if you do not learn how to deal with it alone, if you do not have the strength to deal with it, you're alone, you're dependent on those that surround you. And that scares me.
Mm. I guess I'm sort of thinking about this a different way because I feel like there are definitely times where like I feel very alone, or at the very least not like, or at the very least just not understood properly, which in and of itself is a very lonely feeling. Now that being said, I think while being okay with being alone is a symbol of strength, is a symbol of fortitude, and is a symbol of like you like accepting yourself and growing with yourself. Um, I also feel like for the times that you don't have the strength, like should that ever arise, you do need the help and you do need other people. You know what I mean? Like it's absolutely okay. And you know what? This is one of the I think I would say this is one of the biggest takeaways from 2020 after talking with you all this time. Why not both? You know what I mean? Like you can have both the strength to be alone and you can also seek the strength that you need from others should you choose. You know, because I mean, as much as you can be by yourself and hype yourself up about, everything that you're doing, you do, whether you like it or not, uh, need others as a direct reflection of yourself as how you like part of how you perceive yourself is how you perceive yourself through others, right? So anyway, and that being said, I do like agree with like being alone and learning how to be alone is absolutely important if not essential, because yeah, I would absolutely like I don't like the idea of being dependent emotionally, at least on a lot of people. Like I also don't like the idea of having to go this person, this person, this person, this person in order to deal with my emotions or deal with my head. I like the idea of being able to deal with that on my own. But I also need to know when, hey, I might need to check in with somebody or I would like somebody to check in with me. That sort of thing.
No, and I agree. And I think we kind of touched on this a few times in some heated debates while we're running 10K.
Yeah.
I think this also comes like obviously from like different mentalities just because like, okay, let me break this down in very basic terms. And again, I'm going to say this very broadly and like just to illustrate the point, obviously there's nuances, but I come from a country, a small, a small country. So I'm born in Vancouver, but at the age of 2, we moved here. Um, basically, my mother got in an accident. Well, she kind of got a disease, and she ended up losing her legs. And my dad's Japanese, and we're in a small little community. We don't know what's going on. There's a lot of chaos. Anyways, I was brought up in an environment where, one, I was very different from everyone else, and two, I didn't feel like we fit in. Sorry, that's maybe the same point, but also in the sense that, like, we weren't overly rich.
Right.
My parents. I realize more and more now how much they invested in us. But that being said, we weren't like flying high. We weren't buying quads. We weren't buying Sea-Doos. We weren't buying like Gucci bags, nothing of that. Like, I would go to Value Village to pick up most of my clothing when I was a kid. And that's fine. But that being said, I think my sister and I developed really quickly a need for like not having enough, if that makes sense, and not being able to rely on other people. So, give an example. Sometimes I would ask my sister, "Can you come can you come do this?" But whatever, or my dad, or whatever, and it would just create a lot of chaos. Things would just end up. So we just end up like not wanting to ask anyone for any favors, friends or whatever. Now, that's my background, and so that's why being able to hold my own ground and center myself, I think, is very important to me. Now, let me contrast this to you, and correct me if I'm wrong in any way, but you grew up in a Filipino environment. Family is one of the most remarkable aspects of Filipino culture in the way that you guys really hold down the crew. And in the sense of, like, you can ask your cousin's best friend that works at Best Buy if they can give you a discount. The squad's there to help you out. And they won't make you feel bad. People will show up at your debut, even if they hate you. They'll show up at your social, even if they hate you. They'll buy a ticket. They'll support. People will come to your restaurant, even though they don't necessarily have the money to, buying restaurant food all the time. Like, I might be extrapolating, but that's kind of like some key things that I've noticed from Filipino culture. Obviously, from my perspective, I'm not being part of it.
You're telling this to, in my opinion, one of the most westernized Filipinos ever. But I mean, no, there are some valid observations in that statement, like, for sure.
Yeah, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a lot of like close knit ties and like supporting each other. So if, like, for example, if you want to ask a friend, can you scratch on a track? The community is there to help you. Cultivation was definitely something that showed how Filipinos really want to help each other out in the community, and reaching out, and like Filipinos will. I'm saying Filipinos, and like maybe I'm generalizing too much. Again, very unknowledgeable. I'm not part of the culture. Can't really judge or determine anything. I'm just saying things that I've noticed. You can ask, your friend to like give you a discount on a wedding and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff that happens like this, and you want to help. It's from helping, but it's also a sense of responsibility, etc. So that being said, you wanting to keep more friends around and like, getting that support from other people, I think it's going to come to you naturally as something that you want in your life, if that makes sense. If something that you value, as when you contrast it to me, I'm just like, nah, me, myself, and I support myself. No one else out there for me, though. We out in the streets here. No one.
It's interesting because, as you get older, I feel like it becomes more important to have the right people around rather than having a lot of people around, right? And I mean, a majority of my friends are Filipino. I mean, but I feel like most of who I was surrounded by throughout the years was determined by my proximity. Like either by who I grew up with, who I graduated high school with, and then who, like, for example, if I was dating somebody, their friends and their friends' significant others and all that sorts of things. And at some point, I noticed that the only things that mattered were a select few individuals that were essentially, in my mind, like my pillars. Like, what was that one quote you told me? Like, you resemble the 5.
Yeah, you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with.
Yes, exactly. And I think right now I am most at that point. Um, and that being said, sort of bringing our two contrasts together, I'm okay with being alone because I have the strength of the people who support me behind me. Does that make sense?
100%. I totally
Yeah.
feel you.
Yeah. So, and that's what I mean by the whole thing when I said, like, why not both, right? Um, I absolutely know that, like, I'm the kind of person who's just like, you know what, I got it, I'll do it. Don't worry about it. No, you don't have to help. No, it's all good. I got it. I'm not. I'm like that sort of mentality, right? But I also like, if like my friends are out there getting it, I'm like, I want to be with them, right? If they're out doing amazing stuff, I would like to participate in that because I want to have that experience as well under my belt, right?
So why didn't you join the plant game though?
Because to me, owning a plant wasn't an amazing experience.
Bruh, from someone who had to go through that, I could tell you it's not an amazing experience.
And if I'm gonna go out there and get a plant, I'm gonna do it because I want a plant, not because person ABC went and got plants and are like describing the benefits of having like a freaking air plant on their shelf. Like, I don't know.
Yo, literally everyone who owns a plant and who loves plants is just gonna stop listening to our podcast, which is everyone because everyone's at home and everyone owns a plant.
This
so we literally
podcast
lost.
podcast is condemned. They are plant haters.
Yeah, we just got canceled, fam, by the plant community. We apologize. We love you. We love your plants.
Ooh, man, that was an interesting. That might be for another podcast.
Cancel theory. We are definitely doing
culture.
We are doing cancel culture. Sorry, we are definitely doing an episode on that, and okay, I want to maybe bring my boy Jake because like he's an American and he knows about cancel culture. And anyways, different topic. We're gonna go on a massive tangent. Positives. Okay. Positive of 20.
Yeah. So, I guess since I basically reiterated like the importance of like, the value of like having, well, I guess the big positive was learning about your value. Like for you learned the positivity of having your own space and being alone. And me, I kind of learned about the positivity of understanding who it was that standing closest to me. Like, especially since now you can't just go out and like party it up and meet randoms like wherever you go, right? Now I feel like is the time you can sort of look back and evaluate who it is that you most need in your life and who is most important to you and contributes the most to what you're doing, right? And how you can contribute to them as well, right?
Yeah, no, and I just want to touch on the point that you mentioned, like, you are okay being alone because you have a supportive community and supportive friend group. That's one of the big things that I struggled with because I don't have my squad here, like, again, I'm just going to touch on this because I feel like a lot of Asian groups have this, but in particular Filipinos, Filipinos, you can call your six boys, your six friends, the guys you went to high school with, then like, through and through, and you can show up at the club and, if you're having a bad day, your boys already know. If you broke up with your girl, they'll be like, hey, we're bringing you out to the club and we're going to have a good time. They're going to take care of you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And they respect you, even if you say dumb shit, even if you're in a bad mood, they know that you're a good person. So they're going to holler, they going to hold you, they going to support you. And I appreciate that, but I never had that. Yeah. And so I've always felt left out and I never felt like I was a good person. Like you said, I didn't feel good being alone because I didn't have friends telling me that I'm a good person. I just had a bunch of random people that would just come in my life and then dip.
It's tough, I guess, if you've never really experienced the ride or die mentality, because that's sort of what that is, like the ride or die thing. Like, you throw down, doesn't matter what the other person did. That cast the shade on one of your boys, everybody's gonna go after this guy, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Right.
And I mean, there's definitely ups and downs to that, but this is more of a negative thing about. Obviously, I'm just trying to illustrate it like as a positive thing of like. Obviously, there's difference in mentality of terms of like me trying to really be there for myself and learning to be there for myself because I may not have the same resources that you do or that someone else does. You know, some other people, like I said, like some Filipinos, some Asian people, some white people, black people, like I'm not excluding anyone. They have their crew that are supporting them.
Right.
I unfortunately have never had that. Thus, I need to rely and find other tools at my disposal to be able to support myself. So,
Mm.
if anything, I can relate it to a positive thing that came out of 2020 is that I found clarity.
Mm. It's like you double down on yourself.
Yeah, and one thing that my counselor told me, and again, like, yeah, anyways, one thing that my counselor told me was that I need to trust myself and I need to be on my own team.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I determined would really help me benefit me moving forward would be to hunker down on clarity and really become specific in terms of what kind of person I want to be, what kind of things I want to do, what kind of people I want to include in my life, and what kind of attitude I want to have towards life, you know? So that's kind of relating everything we talked about friendship there, but determining clarity was probably one of the best mindset change that I've had in 2020 for sure.
Mm. For sure. So going forward into 2021 now, right? What can you use from what you've learned, like, in terms of, doubling down on yourself, and how are you going to apply that to your experiences going forward?
Good question again. I think like clarity clarity and intentions are two words that I've mentioned a lot, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that when we go back to that resetting and the reflections and taking that and making sure that I'm in line and that I've got the balance in check to be able to make sure that I'm keeping myself accountable, that I'm verifying with myself that I'm actually in line with what I want to do and want to be,
Mm-hmm.
and then taking the time to actually analyze what it is that I want to do. How am I feeling about this? What's going on? I think
Right.
clarity of the mind, again, with the stillness and everything, and determining really what I need. Again, what I need. And it might sound selfish, it might sound ridiculous, but I think that that's how I want to use clarity, is determining what I need, what I want, in the sense of, like you said, you don't want to plant because everyone else is hopping on the plant game. You know, being
Mm-hmm.
clear, okay, I want to make music not because I want to be a cool ass DJ, or because, I want to make short films, not because I want to be like a famous director or influencer. I want to take travel photos, not because I want to blow up on the gram, but because I'm actually passionate about it, because I want to tell stories, because I want to share, because I think that I have insights to bring. And that's why I write hella long captions on my Instagram, because I do not like to just post just to post. Like, I will from time to time, because I think that
Yeah.
there's obviously inherent benefits and value in that, but I do like to share a little bit more than just the face value of a photo, because I feel like there are people that can take way better photos than me. So I need to,
Mm.
up my game in some way and add value to the world in my way. So that's how
Hmm.
I would use clarity, in my opinion.
Huh, right on, man. Um, One thing I wanted to, since we're, just to double back on the whole talking about positivity thing of this episode, there was one thing, and this I'm sort of relating this to your to I don't want to say your caution in trusting people, but one of the things that I had, and this literally put me in a rut, like around the summer, right? Was It wasn't just trusting people that became difficult, it was trusting the world that was beginning to be way down on me, because the context here, BLM was happening, right? Information warfare was happening. You didn't know what the heck. I mean, this is new news, but you didn't know what the heck the media was putting out there. I remember there at some point there was a lot of videos of, for example, cops like cooperating with BLM protesters, only to have them off screen suddenly turn, like, go Benedict Arnold, and then just do really crappy cop things to them uh, right after they got their photo op, right? So this put me into quite a bit of despair, because it was like, you know, you can barely like you literally didn't know if you could trust your neighbor, right? And it was tough because the only thing I knew I could trust at that point were my friends, right? And of course some of the people in in the music community, right? And then you start start seeing the cracks fall apart, or you start seeing the cracks in some of the people that you had associated with. Then all of a sudden, like, everybody's true intentions and ways of thinking really truly came to light, and you're like, oh no, I don't know if I could listen to this guy. And it's not even just with BLM, it COVID too, like the whole anti-masker movement and everything like that. There are a lot of people that I once respected that I found out were anti-maskers, right? And I'm just like, holy jeez, like, what do I like is nothing, like, I don't know who or what to agree with now, right? So doubling back on, you know and you might be wondering why this is a positive, right? um it solidified my faith in the people that I've chosen to trust, because for the most part, the people that I do hang out with and the people closest to me, I think align with my values, align with my worth, and are deserving of my trust. And I feel like I deserve their trust, because I don't think that they're suddenly gonna, turn around and be like, well, like, BLM this, BLM that. Not sure if I believe in it, because I mean, that sort of like. So yeah, no, that was it was one of the more eye-opening, kind of disturbing experiences of 2020. But again, what I took from it is it really put my own values to the test, and who I associated with that aligned with my values, and how important it was to know your own values and seek the people who carry the same thing.
No, and no, that's a good point. I think that um, that's a like the fact that you can see a positive out of that, I think is amazing. I think overall, even though it came off as a negative thing, I think Black Lives Matter was a huge positive to 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing attention and light to the discussion that has been going on for years. My dad's a huge history buff, and I have a dream, and it already at that point, at that speech when he made it, it was already 100 years later. 100 years later, he was talking about how things had not changed, even though they had declared that things
Right.
would change at that point. So we're in 2020, and things are still not at the level that they should be at,
Yeah.
with all the technology, with all the knowledge, research, etc. So I think overall it brought a lot of light to the Black community, and shout outs to all the Black people who were out there sharing their messages and their stories, etc. I personally didn't get involved too much with it, but I just took that time to kind of reflect and see if I could educate myself a little bit more. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Because obviously I'm not Black, so I can't really comment on like my story and say that whatever. And obviously Asians, and there's that whole aspect as well. Like, I think that Asians obviously have a little bit of their own story in terms, but nothing compared to, like, not in the same sense that like what Black Lives Matter was able to highlight this year. So I think overall it was a positive, even though we saw a lot of negative things.
Mm. I think part of what I saw the most with the people who align with the sort of values that I appreciated is that the intolerance for injustice and oppression became more apparent. More people were standing together and saying, we cannot allow racism to continue happening, and we cannot allow oppression and prejudice to continue happening to these people. Like, and that doesn't just go for obviously Asians, blacks, the indigenous. Like, it's just there's just so much of it, and there's so much oppression that is happening. And I would say that you and I are like literally privileged enough to like be mostly somewhat ignorant to the fact of how deep it runs, right? And that it took something like a huge like global movement like BLM to bring that to your attention and make you feel something towards what's happening to people who are being oppressed like that. You know, as far as long as I can remember, I'm seeing a lot more people around me care about the oppression and injustice going on around us. And it is like literally happening every day. And, sometimes we can be absolutely ignorant to it, or, some people can't be even be bothered with a reshare here and there. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like of a particular post. And I'm happy to see that there are more people taking the stand when it comes to dealing with these kinds of things. Even if even it just means that you're just more aware of it. I know that, like, in terms of the fight against injustice, job's never done. There is always more that can be done. Always, 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 always. But if you at least did a little more than you did last year, then great. Like at least. um, I know for sure. For me, it was it was truly an eye opening experience. So I think for that, like that was sort of like a positive hidden in a very stark negative that we found this year. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a valid point. Um, I think that we can always improve, and like I said, having more awareness about Black Lives Matter or about Black oppression, I think or white oppression. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Um, was a good thing, definitely a positive. But I'm gonna challenge you right now to think of just a few, as we like kind of try to wrap this podcast up, a few like specific things that you thought were really great. So I'm just gonna wind through like some highlights from myself that I can think off the top of my head. So I invested in a wedding show for the first time. I participated in the wonderful wedding show at the beginning of the year, and that was amazing. It was amazing experience, and I got a lot of clients through them, and I'm extremely blessed for that. So that I think was a very big positive for like AMI in general. I also got a lot of opportunities, like a lot of clients. Like I worked for Fort White Alive 3 seasons out of the year, which is
Oh yeah.
amazing. And I absolutely love Fort White Alive. I love what they do. And I hope that they still continue to have me capture some of their events in the future. I managed to get a trip in Hawaii, like right as the pandemic's happening. So that I was blessed to be able to get some travel in. I also traveled obviously to Banff during September. So I was super blessed to do that as well. That was a really surreal trip. So both those trips, amazing. So to be able to say that I actually travel in 2020 is a blessing. Yeah, and like I said, friends, obviously, like connecting with you, connecting a few other individuals, I feel like was definitely a blessing. And understanding my value also came through that, in the sense that, like, again, respecting myself and understanding the level of disrespect that I'm willing to tolerate. And again, that clarity coming through there and reflection. Reading books was huge. Like, I'm really glad I read a lot. Well, a lot. Could read more. Lots of books to read. Job's never done. But
Oh yeah, lots of books to read. I look over next to my book pile that's just growing and growing.
But yeah, lots of insights in books, and I'm super, like, I'm looking forward to diving more and more. And like I go through books, like, and note down quotes, and like, yeah, it's become like a pretty good hobby and passion of mine. And yeah, I think the last thing I'm really thankful for is like time to do nothing. Like, you know me, I go at 150% all the time.
Right.
And I was headed down a terrible rabbit hole, like in March, April. Like summer would have drove me to becoming very depressed and almost suicidal from my predictions, because I got a bunch of weddings, as I said, but I didn't have the infrastructure. I still don't have the infrastructure for all these weddings coming in. I don't have the experience. I've got no one coaching me. You got this, etc. So having time to literally do nothing and just sit there and go on Netflix and watch a bunch of shows, I think was something that was really positive for me.
Mm.
Even though it was definitely mentally tough, it's definitely a positive. How about you, my guy? What you got?
Okay, let's see. First and foremost, I want to say I'm really thankful for one of the most simplest things is, yeah, I like the thing where you said the time to do nothing. Like, one of the things I enjoyed the most during the summer was biking, man. Like, I biked a lot. And biking came as a consequence of not being able to really do much because of the lockdown, right? Luckily, my brother, he didn't have the use for this one bike, and he sold it to me, and that thing became my best friend during the summer. Like, literally, there was nothing better than feeling like the wind and listening to some good music, and just not having to think and just watching, like, the scenery go by. There's nothing better than that. The best kind of zoning out, right? Um, as for another positive, I branched out a lot this year, beyond music. Like, I really feel like I expanded my scope in terms of what I can do, like, other than production. So, for example, just a quick run through. Like, I'm currently designing sounds and songs for a video game, which is an entirely different ball game from just what I normally standardly produce. I ended up doing a film score for a short movie this year. That was a big which was like, it ended up winning an award, which was really interesting. And then, of course, we're recording podcasts right now, and I've actually done some podcast editing for some people, which is pretty great. Like, yeah, so a lot of going beyond the scope I'm very thankful for all those different sort of opportunities, because it just shows me that, like, although it's not exactly the same path that I had chosen, it's almost like little extra branches on the path that I know that I can, that I'm capable of doing and meaning to, and rising up to the challenge. Because, and just the other thing, the fact that I got to try new things, and like be awarded for it was amazing. It's an amazing feeling, just, it makes you feel like, oh, what else am I capable of, right? And that's something I'd also like to explore, like, this year going forward. And then finally, I just want to be like, I'm thankful that, like, I was able to come out of 2020 with the friends that I did. I'm not even gonna say friends, but the connections that I did, you know, um, because there's a lot of people that I feel confident that I'm moving into this year with, that are in it for the long haul for the most part. Like, whether that be a music relationship, whether or not that be a general friendship, that whether that be a business relationship, I feel like I made a lot of good, meaningful connections this year, more so than any other year. Right? I feel like 2019, 2018 was like laying the foundation musically, at least, for these connections to happen. And once a lot more people could see what I could do, like, the opportunities began to present themselves, a lot more, to the point where it was becoming a lot more consistent, sustainable, and it was just becoming like a lot more like, okay, hey, there are people here that want this service, that service, and I'm thankful and extremely grateful for it.
I would just say that, like, obviously common themes that are coming through is appreciation, obviously. You did mention, like, appreciation for the connections you made, for the experiences that you had. And we also both said, like, time to do nothing. And that's why, like, one big thing that has been something that I'm coming back to, it's like, we complain about not being able to do this, but as my dad always reminds me, with every crisis comes opportunity. And we don't get the opportunity to have time to do nothing ever. Ever. And so being appreciative of that and understanding, that we've been given a gift, whether it's not in the form of, it wasn't wrapped, and it sure looked like thorns rather than a rose of a gift. But I would say that, learning to really appreciate what we have, I think is probably one of the best things that I came out of.
Yeah, I guess
With
I guess
2020.
really what it I guess
2020
really what it is just like, yeah, it was the gift of time, because it's something that we can never ever have enough of. But the fact that we can be granted just a little bit of it, just to do whatever we want, is a blessing.
True that.
Yeah.
All right. As always, appreciate you, bro. Low key, we were both drinking tea this time around.
Yeah. Maybe we should just call it caffeine chats instead of coffee chats,
But speaking of that, yeah, I feel like you're caffeinated enough, but I might go fill up some more tea up in here.
Yeah, I might too. All right, man. Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh boy.
ASMR, ASMR.